Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. In our research examining primary teachers' concerns, self-efficacy, attitudes, intentions, and challenges of implementing inclusive pedagogy in English literacy classrooms for bilingual dyslexic students in the UAE. I am again Romee Capate from the Zayed University of the United Arab Emirates. I am working as a statistics instructor from the College of Interdisciplinary Studies. And I will be, joining me today is Mr. Jose Roan Adorna of the GEMS Founder School Al Barsha of the UAE as well. And also together with us in this research is Dr. Robin Eric Ogdol of the Higher Colleges of Technology and Dr. Aisha Alteneiji of the Higher Colleges of Technology as well. In today's presentation, I will be covering the following: the research background, the research methods, the results, and finally, the conclusion. Now, inclusive education has been recognized worldwide as a fundamental human right, which all people should be entitled to, regardless of their circumstances. However, even though nearly 240 million children all over the world live with disabilities, only a small fraction of them receive education due to their disabilities. And that is according to Shelton and Gezer study of 2023. Now, in the United Arab Emirates, inclusive education is one of the key foci of its educational policies. The UAE has introduced inclusive education as part of their commitment to give each student an equal opportunity to learn, regardless of disability or non-disability. This is based on the idea that diversity should be honored and welcomed within society, according to Alborno and God of 2014, of their 2014 study. Now, because of these, we have challenges in inclusive education that teachers actually face. They may include lack of training, insufficient resources, and managing diverse needs within the classroom. Now, there are also impacts of teachers' concerns on inclusive education. There are teachers whose whole career was built in a way that used to exclude, you heard that right, exclude the students with special needs, certainly face some apprehensions about implementations of inclusive education. Now, if teacher concerns are not addressed well, the teacher suspects the situation being impervious to any effect, leading to a withdrawn self of self-efficacy. On another hand, teacher intention about inclusive teaching means that the teacher has a plan and commitment to employ instructional strategies and techniques that achieve the objective of educating the students with different backgrounds and learning needs while they are in the same classroom. Now, with all of these literature, we were able to say that this study utilizes Bandura's social cognitive theory to determine how teachers' concerns about inclusive education impacts everyday problems they face in school, self-efficacy, and intentions including. Now, Bandura's theory enables the researchers to investigate cognitive and affective processes that determine teachers' reactions to inclusive education. The theory also focused on self-control and goal setting in behavior. When it comes to inclusive education, teachers who are involved in goal setting and self-regulatory practices are likely to diminish their concerns and fears, and thus enhance self-efficacy, attitudes, and intentions. Now, this study is very significant to address the complex relationship between teachers' concerns, self-efficacy, attitude, and intention towards the implementation of inclusive pedagogy in the English literacy classrooms. Second, it is also very important for the stakeholders, such as the students, the teachers, the management, curriculum developers, policymakers, and parents, These results would shed the light on essential approaches that lead to a more developmentally appropriate, supportive, and inclusive, equitable educational environment in the United Arab Emirates. This study is going to employ mixed methods case to examine the concerns, efficacy, attitudes, and intentions of 48 primary school teachers regarding inclusive pedagogy in the UAE. Now, in addition, the research investigated also primary challenges that the teachers faced when they sought to incorporate inclusive pedagogical practices in regular classroom. And thirdly, there will be tools that we will use for this study. 4 tools. 1 is the concerns about inclusive educational scale, or CIES, which is adopted from the study of Sharma and Desai in 2002. Second is the teacher efficacy for inclusive practices, or called TEIP scale, which was adopted from the study of Sharma and Lorman and Forlin in 2012. Thirdly, the AIS, or attitude towards inclusion scale. This was developed to assess the attitude of teachers towards inclusion, which was adopted from Sharma and Jacobs' study in 2016. And the ITICS, or intention to teach in an inclusive classroom scale, which was formulated in a manner to depict the educator's intention, which was used by Sharma and Jacobs in 2016. And lastly, we have interviewed the teachers to determine the factors which serve as challenges when teachers bring about inclusive learning in the mainstream classroom. And now for the results, we have Mr. Jose Roan Adorna of the GEMS Founder School.
All right, so let's move on to the result this time. So through the adaptation of the main interpretation table from the study of Dreyfus and to 2012, the data presented in this table, the teachers expressed a high degree of concern about implementing inclusive education practices in the classrooms, considering the several numbers of challenges they face in their day-to-day teaching. However, considering the standard deviation is around 1.1, this suggests that there is considerable diversity in the responses. The data show that among all the factors considered in the CIES, the teacher participants convey that there have no two very low degree of concern. The following: 1, lack of knowledge and skills in implementing inclusive pedagogy. 2, lack of incentives and skills in return of the additional responsibilities that inclusive education entail. And thirdly, decline of academic achievements of regular students. Can you have the next slide, sir, please? Okay, thank you, Sir Nikki. Now let's move on to the results, the degree of teacher self-efficacy to implement inclusive pedagogy. Now, this table 4 shows that the teachers have high degree of self-efficacy for inclusive practices. The findings indicate that teachers feel confident in their knowledge, competencies, and abilities to actively engage in fostering inclusive classroom environments through implementation of effective and successful teaching methods. The value of the standard deviation reflects that there are sections in which a teacher's responses vary. It is important to note that teachers express that they are not confident in the following. First one, preventing disruptive behavior in the class before it happens. Second, designing learning opportunities that cater the individual needs of the students with disabilities. Third, informing colleagues and other stakeholders who know little about the laws and policies about inclusive education. The results also suggest that a call for providing teachers with increased opportunities to attend trainings, workshops, and other avenues aimed at enhancing their knowledge and skills in inclusive education. Yeah, Sir Nikki, can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, thank you, sir. So let's move to table 6. Now let's take a look at this table. This table illustrates that teachers exhibit extremely highly favorable attitudes towards inclusive education and its implementation of the classes. Low standard deviation implies that the gathered data present consistent and homogeneous answers. This demonstrates that teachers have very strong and positive attitudes toward the principles and practices of inclusive education, particularly in how they implement them in their own classes, and the concrete efforts of UAE to include the people of determination in the mainstream education as reflected in the Ministerial Resolution number 647 for the year 2020 on the policy of inclusive education. Now, next slide, please, sir. Okay, so let's go to the results, the degree of teachers' intentions to adopt inclusive teaching practices. Now, take a look at this table. As what you could see, this table, it shows the teachers have a very high degree of intentions to implement inclusive education. The results also imply that the teacher participants are extremely motivated, enthused, and committed to implement inclusive pedagogy in the classrooms. However, it is important to note that teachers express reluctance of the idea of including students with severe disabilities in the class. Then for the next slide, okay, so this table presents that there is a strong negative relationship between the teacher's concerns and their self-efficacy. The results imply that the higher level of concerns in implementing inclusive pedagogy, which are influenced by the challenges encountered in everyday teaching, the lower level of confidence in incorporating inclusive teaching practices. Moreover, the table also shows that there is a strong inverse relationship observed between teachers' concerns and their attitudes towards inclusive education and its implementation. This indicates that the higher the level of teachers' concerns in implementing inclusive pedagogy, which are impacted by the challenges encountered in the daily classroom teaching, the more negative attitude towards the purpose of inclusive education and incorporating inclusive practices in the mainstream classrooms. And lastly, a moderate negative relationship exists between the teachers' concerns and their intentions to adopt inclusive classroom practices, is illustrated by the table. This suggests that as the teacher participants increase, their commitment to implement inclusive pedagogy effectively decreases to a moderate extent. And for the next slide, now, let's focus on this table. As what you could see, this table illustrates the linear relationship between one, teacher self-efficacy and their attitudes towards inclusive education. And two,
I'm so sorry for interrupting you because there are 3 minutes left. Okay.
Okay, I just make it easier. Two, teacher self-efficacy and the intentions to adopt inclusive teaching practice after applying the person's correlation coefficient formula and testing the significance of calculated correlation. Moreover, the table 10 displays that the teacher's self-efficacy and their commitment to adopt inclusive classroom pedagogy demonstrate a strong positive association. This implies that the higher level of self-confidence in implementing inclusive practice are correlated with greater and more profound intentions to adopt them. Now, for this table displays the result after application of Pearson's correlation coefficient formula and testing the calculated correlation coefficient to determine if there is a relationship between the teacher participants' attitudes towards inclusive education and its implementation and their intentions to adopt inclusive pedagogy. So the findings reveal that there's an observed strong positive linear association of two factors, the teacher's attitudes and intentions. Okay, thank you.
And with the results of the interview, there are many factors or challenges in implementing inclusive pedagogy in mainstream classroom settings, such as adapting on instructional strategies, classroom dynamics, relationships, administrative concerns, and reconciling with the bilingual students. And finally, the negative relationship shows that there is an adverse effect of fears on teachers' willingness to embrace inclusive practices. And the educators that face complex challenges, which requires customized interventions and collaborative efforts, from reconciling bilingual curricula to managing classroom dynamics and dealing with resource constraints. Thank you very much for listening, and we'd like to also thank the participating students, teachers, management of the school for their cooperation, including the validators of the research. Thank you so much.